The Rita Cosby Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. Breaking news.
And tonight on the Rita Cosby Show, President Trump ratcheting the attacks on Iran, hitting many of them along the Strait of Hormuz. And also, in the last little bit, sending a chilling warning saying from now on, anytime that Iran shoots at a ship in the Strait, then the U.S. will bomb a bridge or a power plant. And he says that includes those in the capital city of Tehran. So things are definitely heating up here on the Rita Cosby Show. And again, this was the 11th night of pounding by the U.S. military at different targets, mostly a lot tied to the IRGC, but a lot with these drone launchers, also anything tied to missile launchers, drone factories, storage facilities, a lot of different things tied to aircraft with the IRGC. But you could tell President Trump is just fed up. And there are reports tonight that a lot of U.S. reinforcement from a military perspective are on their way to Iran. So it begs the question, what is the U.S. preparing for? And what are they expecting also from Iran? Because on the same hand, we're hearing that the Iranians want to talk, according to President Trump. And I'm sure they are saying different things privately than they are publicly. But publicly, the Iranian foreign minister is saying that aggression will be compelled to have a powerful response, an eye for an eye. So, I mean, that doesn't sound like a peaceful nation that is ready to negotiate. Not that I ever thought that they would be. But really, things are definitely heating up. And with more military might going into the theater there, into that military area there in the Mideast, it certainly means that things could get very heated very quickly. And if the Iranians try to shoot anything in the Strait, any vessel with a drone or a missile or whatever it is, President Trump has now said, we will go after a bridge or a power plant, and that includes those in the capital city of Tehran. He really wants to hit them where it hurts. He's obviously going to watch for anything he can do to avoid civilian casualties or anything that could hurt civilian resources. Obviously, a big population there in Tehran. But he has to start really getting tough on the Iranian regime because he knows that they seem to have a lot of rhetoric and a lot still of these sort of random drones and these random missiles. Are they degraded? Big time. But they are not down and out. And that's the problem. And he needs to break them. And I've contended, I've said it to you guys all along, I think we need to finish the job. I've never trusted these people. I trust President Trump, but I certainly don't trust the Iranians. And it's time to finish the job. And he's got to do some real serious pounding. And I think the Israelis will be happy to help. And maybe even some of our Arab neighbors will finally also want to step up and help because they've been the victim of a lot of these targets. And in fact, the Iranians have tried to hit the desalinization plant there in Kuwait for a second time. That is so dangerous when you think about it. That is so dangerous. What are they trying to hit? The water supply and pound them into oblivion? That is really dangerous. You could tell these Iranians have no borders, no morals, no scruples. They don't have a lot of military, but they have a lot of lunacy. And I say it is time to get tough. Meantime, let's also talk about the DSA, the communist takeover. President Trump tonight at a rally in Georgia. And he said that the communists clearly are taking over the Democratic Socialist Party and the Democrat Party. And he also says, you know what? We will not let it happen. We will fight tooth and nail. Some of the latest polls that have come out, even in the last few hours, I was just looking at right before the show. They are clearly showing that it is a very tight race for the House and also for the Senate. And normally, usually the other party, the Democrat Party, would be running away with it. It's a midterms. They're dealing with gas. They're dealing with all the other issues. You're dealing with the war. A lot of times you would see like a supremacy by the other party. And that ain't happening here. And that's because America's looking and saying, you know what? President Trump is trying. he is trying to get rid of a terrorist regime. None of these other presidents even dared try, and their attempts were so lame. And also, he clearly has still kept oil and gas prices within a reasonable range. Not perfect by no means. He clearly wants to bring them down. But he also has an enormous task at hand, and he is certainly trying. And he's not a warmonger either, because he's letting them talk when they're ready to talk and when they're reasonable. But if they're not reasonable, he's not going to waste his time. And that's the right strategy. But I'm begging you, Mr. President, finish the job. Now is time to finish the military job. These people need to wake up, and we need to figure out a way to get also, I believe, a regime change there. 1-800-848-9222, 1-800-848-9222. And you are listening to The Rita Cosby Show. Well, Zohran Mamdani is still making a lot of headlines. As we were talking about the DSA, the king of the DSA, Zohran Mamdani in New York. Well, as we know, he kind of backed off last night. Remember, right before the show, he was backing off, and he puts out this video still blasting Netanyahu, calling him a war criminal, saying some really horrible things like, oh, he's responsible for 73,000 deaths. He's a murderer. He's a killer. He's this, he's that, genocide, all that stuff. And then he said, but I figured out that we don't have the authority to arrest him if he comes to New York. But I'm begging the federal authorities to look into this, and you guys do it. Like they're going to listen to Zohran Mamdani, like Donald Trump is going to say, oh, yeah, what a brilliant idea Zohran Mamdani has. I mean, this guy has such a screw loose, a mayor of a local jurisdiction, New York City, albeit an enormous one, sitting there saying, yeah, I would like to see the feds step up and arrest this guy because of the bogus ICC, International Criminal Court warrant. Well, wait till you hear what Zohran Mamdani said today, guys. First of all, here is Zohran Mamdani in the middle of all this. He's kind of mucking it up with comedian Jon Stewart on his podcast, and they're laughing about the label socialist, saying, isn't that funny? Take a listen.
Being a Muslim Democratic Socialist, I thought it would be pretty straightforward.
You just saw like, well, what if I label myself something that scares people the most? I'm a Muslim Democratic Socialist.
If you scare them twice.
And I'd like to run your public transportation system.
Yeah.
Isn't that just fun? Not only do you want to have free buses, the whole thing that has not come through. What about housing, controlling housing? What about anti-police? What about anti-ICE? I don't think these are laughing matters. Somehow I'm missing the joke. And here is Zohran Mamdani today. He did a press conference. And, of course, everybody was asking him, did you flip? Did you flop? Explain this, why you suddenly aren't going to be enforcing the ICC warrant yourself. But are you still anti-Netanyahu? And if there was ever any gray, there's no gray now. Listen to Zohran Mamdani today, still saying, oh, yeah, we need to go after Netanyahu.
Question about why Netanyahu specifically is often targeted in some of your comments. For example, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, he was arrested for a warrant that was here in the U.S., and you were very against that. So I guess how do you place more emphasis on the warrants that were issued by the International Criminal Court than here in the U.S.? How do you reconcile those two?
I would say that the International Criminal Court is a body that seeks to hold those across the world accountable for crimes against humanity, for war crimes, for things of that nature. And I think that the United States should not only be a party to that court, but should also execute the warrants that court issues. And what I have spoken up about Nicolas Maduro, who I've also described appropriately as a dictator, is that the violation of international law is one that has to also be taken very seriously. It stems from the same belief in the International Criminal Court. And now he is here in New York City. On that day when the United States did violate international law, I made clear that I was in opposition to that. And it all stems from the same belief in how can there be a sanctity in something beyond an understanding of the world where might is right. And
wait a minute. So he had a problem with Maduro, and I never really heard him condemn Hamas. I heard his wife cheer when she liked the tweet about October 7th. The world is truly upside down. It's Alice in Wonderland, guys. And here's a little bit more, because he says, guess what, Netanyahu, maybe I won't arrest you. I'm begging the feds to arrest you. Obviously, Trump ain't going to do that, but maybe if Kamala Harris, who wants to run again, if she became president, and I'm sure he would support her, maybe she might consider arresting Netanyahu. I mean, she's that crazy. But yet, Mamdani tripled down today and said, Netanyahu, I hope you don't come to New York. You are not welcome. Listen to this.
Benjamin Netanyahu is a war criminal, the architect of a horrific genocide against the Palestinian people. He is responsible for the killing of more than 73,000 people, for the maiming of tens of thousands of children as those who survive undergo amputation without anesthesia, for the targeting of neonatal hospitals and maternity care centers, denying newborns even the chance to live, for the countless people he starved as he blocked food and humanitarian aid from reaching them, for the gunning down of hundreds of aid workers and journalists. And just last month, the UN confirmed that Palestinian children continue to be deliberately targeted and killed by Israeli armed forces, more than 8 months after the so-called ceasefire. The list goes on and on, all as we, as Americans, pay for the bombs that do the killing. There is a reason the International Criminal Court issued a warrant for his arrest. As human beings, we have spent generations building a shared understanding that there are crimes so grave they offend all of humanity. Anyone, with their eyes, with their heart, with their conscience, should recognize the devastation he has wrought and understand that he belongs before a court of law. As I've said, I agree with the ICC that Benjamin Netanyahu should be arrested and tried for his crimes, as I do for anyone else charged by the ICC. My administration has reviewed every avenue available under applicable law to determine whether New York City could execute the International Criminal Court's arrest warrant if Benjamin Netanyahu came here. It is clear that we do not have the independent legal authority to enforce this warrant. The federal government, however, does, and I call on them to join the ICC and execute this warrant. And I want to be equally clear. Benjamin Netanyahu is not welcome in New York City, nor is any other war criminal at large. While we cannot end the genocide on our own, we can decide whether our silence will become another weapon, and we can examine every tool we have to defend the humanity and dignity of all people. That is my commitment to you.
Wow. There is just so much there with this guy, and he repeated that again today. Benjamin Netanyahu is not welcome in New York. Guess what? The Anti-Defamation League said that there has been a 480, nearly 500% increase in attacks in New York City of anti-Semitism in the last decade. That's actually very, very frightening. Just in 2025, in New York City, 1,100 anti-Semitic incidents. Of the 75% of anti-Semitic attacks in the state of New York, they're in New York City. And then you got a mayor who is saying the prime minister of Israel is not welcome. And then he says a court of law needs to try this guy. What about a court of law going after the repeat offenders who push people on the subway? There was a crazy guy who stabbed an off-duty police officer in the last 24 hours in the hand, just randomly. What about that person? Maybe that person should see a court of law. Maybe that person should see charges from people like Alvin Bragg and Mamdani. But yet he's not focused on that. No. He is focused on Netanyahu. We're going to take your calls when we come back. 1-800-848-9222. And you're listening to The Rita Cosby Show.
The Rita Cosby Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. It's the Rita Cosby Show.
And tonight, a lot of news tied to Zohran Mamdani. A group of landlords have filed suit against him. This is tied to all of the decisions he made with the Rent Guidelines Board. saying essentially that it's an unlawful New York City rent freeze, an abuse of power, and it's definitely going to be hurting many New York City landlords. And then there's reports that after Labor Day, Mamdani is going to be doing a big full court press to be pushing for major tax hikes, some of them which may actually hurt some minority groups. So it seems like he is full steam ahead on tax hikes. Is there any other way he can make New York more miserable? 1-800-848-9222. 1-800-848-9222. It is Democratic Socialists in action. Let's go to Reggie in Texas, line 5. Go ahead, Reg, your thoughts tonight.
Hey, Miss Rita, I'm just wondering, where's the New York City Police Union chief chiming in and saying, listen, our officers are going to execute legal warrants and indictments, things of arrest for that we're legally obligated. You don't have a legal obligation to arrest the prime minister of another country on an international court charge. This can all be dispelled. The fact that they're not saying anything, that's the most troubling thing. Where's the city council of New York telling this guy, hey, our city's falling apart, dude. Why don't you pay attention to what's going on here and stop trying to save the world?
You know, you bring up a great point because we've heard kind of that message actually from like Netanyahu's spokesperson, and we've heard that message from other people. But you're right. The people closely associated with it, especially like you bring up the city council. The problem is, Reggie, and you can imagine this, New York City ain't Texas, unfortunately. And many people on the New York City Council agree with Zohran Mamdani. Not all of them, clearly, but most of them. And I think that's a really sad testament to where we are. When you got a chorus of crazy, that's a mess, right, Reg?
Yes, ma'am. The last time I was in New York, Miss Reed, I'm going to tell you the truth. It was the greatest sight I've ever seen in my life. New York City in my rear view mirror.
Oh, how sad. Well, Reggie, Texas is always great. And boy, is it looking better and better and better. Reggie, thank you very, very much. 1-800-848-9222. And everybody, we will continue your calls when we come back here on The Rita Cosby Show.
The Rita Cosby Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. Rita Cosby is on. The Rita Cosby Show presents Back the Blue.
And this Back the Blue segment coming from Buffalo, New York, where 4 police officers, including a Buffalo State University police officer, Lieutenant William Giddick, were recognized by the city council for their response in saving a teenager's life after he was struck by a vehicle while riding an electric scooter. Now, a high school student was riding an e-scooter. He failed to yield to traffic with a green light, and that resulted in a crash at an intersection. Now, one officer first was notified. He got on the scene. Others responded, and that included a school resource officer, by the way. One of the officers was off duty at the time of the accident and immediately took action and arrived on the scene. And once he was there, he said, I pulled out of the parking lot to go to the intermediate school. And while waiting in the lane at the intersection, that's when I heard the police cars, the sirens. So I immediately turned around, drove over the curb with my vehicle, ran on foot to the intersection, he said, got out, obviously, and then he met the officers that were there. He said, I knew we had to act quickly. Once on the ground, they had to save that boy who was very, very seriously injured. And he said it was important that we jumped into action quickly. The boy was immediately taken to the hospital, and that teen is expected to make a full recovery. And medics credit the very fast action by the men and women in blue, including that officer, Lieutenant William Gimmick, who happened to be off that day, but never is off when you are a man or woman in blue. Well, we've been talking about Iran. We've also been talking about Zohran Mamdani and so much tonight. Speaking of Iran, I mentioned that President Trump, you could tell, is fed up. He is saying that if Iran hits anything in the Strait, any ship in the Strait, not just a U.S. ship, but any ship, there will be heck to pay, and that there will be bombs flying on bridges and power plants, including in or near the capital city of Tehran. And here is Victoria Coates. We talked with her earlier on Katz and Cosby, former Deputy National Security Advisor for President Trump.
I think, the president's sending a very clear signal that we are going to have safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz going forward. And so what he said is he's going to start striking some infrastructure around Tehran. And that's very specific because a lot of Iran is quite rural. And folks are maybe not used to all of the services you would expect. But in the capital city, people expect electricity, they expect water, they expect services. That is all being chipped away at. And so I think you're going to see that put some more very difficult pressure on the regime in Tehran to try to maintain what's left of their base. And, the other thing we saw today was Saudi Arabia signing this very significant nuclear deal with the United States. Every country in the region that's not named Iran is drawing closer to the United States.
And that is a very powerful testament to what's happened. And listen, a lot of it's because Iran has been firing at so many people in the region that were once their allies, that are their neighbors. And yet they are fed up, too, because they're losing people and they're taking a lot of incoming, including, as I mentioned, Kuwait, taking with the desalinization plants. These people, again, are monsters. These are monsters, these Iranians. They don't care. And yet you've heard tonight the Democrats. I read you what President Trump put out on Truth Social. And the Democrats tonight are going crazy saying, how could President Trump consider hitting a bridge? Well, if a bridge is used by a military convoy, the military uses it for transport. You're darn right. That is fair game. And obviously, it's pretty sad when you hear of what happens in wartime. It's not pretty. But you think dealing with a ruthless Iranian regime and them getting a nuclear weapon would be a pretty sight? No way. And that's why President Trump has to finish the job. He has been very cooperative with them. He's given them every chance. And these people are monsters. He's come very far. He's made a tremendous progress, amazing progress, but he's got to finish the job. And here is General Jack Keane, of course, Fox News senior strategic analyst. We talked with him also earlier on Katz and Cosby, and this is what he thinks of the Iranian regime.
I understand that the foreign minister of Iran is sitting in Pakistan begging that they want to sit down, and that Secretary Rubio a few hours ago or this morning said that we're not going to sit down with them because we don't think they're serious. But is this a moving target?
Yeah, here's what I think, John. I mean, it's a great question. We have fallen prey to this in the past. They will say whatever they have to say to get us to stop doing what is frustrating them. And that's what they said when we went to a ceasefire. And they are somewhat emboldened by the fact that they shut down the Straits of Hormuz. When did they do that? We started the war on the 28th of February. They shut it down on the 2nd of March. And over time, they realized that this gave them leverage over the Gulf state and partners. In a way, their nuclear program, they always wanted that for leverage, for sure. But most of it is under a mountain of rubble. But the Straits of Hormuz gave them this leverage, and they're convinced, that rightfully so, and I think they're accurate about this, that President Trump likely did go to a ceasefire about a month or so after they closed the Straits because of rising oil prices and the gas prices that came along with it and the political implications. He's never hidden that from anybody. But he tried in earnest to get a diplomatic solution. And these guys say what we want to hear. And I think the administration is fed up with it. And of course they're saying to the Pakistanis and the Qataris, they're saying anything right now to get us to stop what we're doing. Because the one thing they don't want to have is to have the United States open up the Straits of Hormuz and have them lose their leverage. That is their major center of gravity that exists right now. And that's just the simple truth of it.
And by the way, some interesting kind of breaking news coming in. Let's go to this breaking news if we could.
Breaking news.
Just in, this is interesting, that former Biden special counsel Jack Smith could be facing some potential criminal prosecutions now that we are hearing that the House Judiciary Committee in the last hour has issued a criminal referral for Jack Smith, arguing that some of these newly released records contradict his testimony. Remember about lawmakers' text messages. We had that here on the show. And it's just crossing just now that, of course, remember Arctic Frost, where he said, oh, no, I only got phone records that would show that so-and-so called so-and-so and what time they did it. And it turns out, according to Chuck Grassley and information they released from the committee, that wasn't the case, that they actually got text messages. Can you imagine conversations with 44 different lawmakers and others? And what did they all have in common? Connections to President Trump. I mean, you can't make it up. Can you imagine? They were speaking to the President of the United States, and Jack Smith and his team had the text messages, according to the committee. And what's worse about it is he was asked about it under oath, and he said, no. We only got, just the skeleton of sort of when people called and who called who, but we have no idea the contents. Well, the big question is, did he lie under oath? And Jim Jordan, who is the House Judiciary Committee chairman, Republican of Ohio, issued that criminal referral for Jack Smith, former special counsel. This is an extraordinary moment in American history, saying that the ex-prosecutor may have misled and lied to Congress about the scope of his investigation into President Donald Trump. And you can't make this up. I was just watching one of the Democratic, if you will, different networks, and one of them just put out weaponization against Jack Smith. If that's not the classic, Jack Smith is the guy who was behind the whole Mar-a-Lago raid. He's the guy with all the January 6th stuff, but yet he's the victim now. Didn't they have guns drawn when, he showed up, when his team, the FBI and Merrick Garland and all those guys showed up, and then he couldn't wait to go after President Trump. He was like salivating at the oh, wait, I got another investigation. I got another one. Remember, it was like we didn't even have enough hands to count all the different investigations against President Trump. And then remember, the charges weren't even brought forward against Biden, even though he had classified documents strewn all over Hunter's Corvette. And now the House Judiciary Committee is saying that he may have misled / lied to Congress, which is obviously a no-no. And now they have made a criminal referral to the Department of Justice and to others. This is getting really juicy, and I'm sure we'll be talking a lot about this tomorrow. 1-800-848-9222. 1-800-848-9222. Let's go to Sal in New Jersey on line 3. Go ahead, Sal.
Rita, I want to bring up two issues. The first one is concerning Iran. Iran today is somewhat similar to what Japan was in World War II. The Japanese believe that the emperor was a god, and the Iranians believe that they have the Iranian leadership, that they have a godlike mission to rule the world. The Mahdi, you've heard of the Mahdi, and yes. We just have to keep bombing them because we can't allow these fanatics to win. We have to take them out, because eventually they will give in if we keep bombing them. Because they're not invincible.
Although, Sal, let me ask you, if you believe, like I do, that it really needs to get a lot more painful for the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, for some of these groups, because I feel like it's been painful, and I'm sure it's been very painful, but not painful enough.
Absolutely. I believe it's not painful enough. We have to keep intensifying the bombing. We have to keep bombing all the infrastructure, bombing all the power plants, bombing everything short of civilian targets.
Yeah, I agree. The problem is, and that's why I brought up the whole power plant and everything regarding, the different structures, the bridges, the things, a lot of these things, and they're called in official terms, dual use targets. And that's where civilians obviously need power plants. They obviously need bridges. But if they are also used to support the military regime in some shape or form, that is a fair target, especially if it's transporting goods. In World War II, it happened all the time. Yeah, you see any bombing of World War II. Guess what? We'd go after the bridges. We'd go after the trains. We'd go after those structures because they knew that they were transporting nefarious means and they were using that particular bridge. Did it obviously cause some chaos clearly for the civilian population? Yes. But the devastation to the military was worth a lot more. And that's why. And do you agree that that's where we got to get? And the problem is, Sal, with these people, and I said this to all of you guys at the beginning, I've met with the Iranians. I have not gone over to Iran, but I've met with Iranian officials in America and had up close meetings, with the leader of Iran years ago. I looked at him inches to inches. Our faces were apart. And I'll never forget the moment. And I said this to you guys on the air. I asked him, and it was right after 9/11. I said, hey, what's the difference between George Bush and Osama bin Laden? And he cocked his head like Sybil, and he said, Rita, they're basically the same thing. And that's when I said, boy, we're in trouble. And that guy was trying to pose himself like a moderate. So these people believe that America is terrorist. America is the Satan. And that's from the moderates. And then you add in all these other crazies that are there on top of it. I don't really believe there are any moderates in Iranian leadership, at least not right now. What do you think, Sal?
No, there are no moderates. They're all fanatics. And the thing is like Benjamin Netanyahu said, we don't want to get rid of a Hitler and replace him with a Himmler because they're all in cahoots with each other. They're all a bunch of fanatic Islamo-Nazis. And Rita, can I make one more bring up one more
Of
topic?
course, Sal, go ahead. We love you, Sal, so go ahead.
Concerning Mamdani, he wants to equate what Israel did to what the Palestinians did. The Palestinian Authority, Hamas, they started that war. They killed Israelis. They murdered babies. The Israelis were merely fighting back and defending themselves, and the Palestinians, they were killing innocent people outright. The Israelis were targeting just the terrorists. They weren't targeting civilians. So it was a different story between what the Palestinians did and what the Israelis did.
I agree. It is night and day, Sal. I agree. I mean, they came in. Let's not forget what happened on October 7th. They came in. They murdered children. They murdered and raped the women. They took them captive. We didn't get all of our prisoners back, sadly, our captives back. I mean, this was horrible. And it was Americans too, not just Israelis. Everybody was in this together. Those people were monsters, what they did on October 7th. And anybody who doesn't condemn it and anybody who only talks and uses this genocide of Gaza, they're not feeding them. They're not doing that. That's nonsense. Hamas is taking the food. Hamas are monsters. Hezbollah's monsters. The Houthis are monsters. And the head of the snake is Iran. 1-800-848-9222. And we'll continue after the break.
The Rita Cosby Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. This is the Rita Cosby Show.
And let's continue your calls here on the Rita Cosby Show. Let's go to Robert in Philly, line 2. Go ahead, Robert.
Hi, Rita. I see it's the end of the hour, so I will be quick. To end the war in Iran quickly, and after listening to some of the informative guests you have on, I think it's a three-pronged attack. Take Kharg Island, put bounties on the leaders of the IRGC and anybody else in the Iranian government, and arm the dissident groups within Iran. You know, Stan the other day said, why aren't the Iranian people doing anything? I guess he missed the 48,000 that were executed in the streets just for protesting. But if we arm them sensibly and keep the pressure on the Iranian leadership while holding Kharg Island, not only that, have the dissidents draw the IRGC out into battle and provide air support to them. We can do this without our foot soldiers. We just have to think outside the box. And I think this three-pronged step will not only end it quicker, but will end it in a more permanent fashion, meaning we got to take out the people who are in charge of it. And I think bounties are a good idea. And if you arm the dissidents within Iran and shut off their oil, they are going to start panicking. Don't listen to them even then. Take them out whether they say we surrender or not, because as long as they're alive, they're going to keep doing what they're going to do. You know what I mean? I
agree. I mean, the minute their mouth is moving, they're lying. You know, I mean, I agree with you. Now, a couple things, Robert. How long do you think that process would take? And what I found really interesting, President Trump has kind of alluded to this a couple times about getting something to obviously have the individuals there to rise up, because that would be great. And he kind of alluded, like, you know, maybe there might be other people on the ground who might be helping them or doing whatever. Mm-hmm. So I think if they can get bigger support to the people on the ground. I like your idea about taking Kharg and shutting off all revenue. I don't understand why we have not done that. I actually agree that that should happen, because you got to really starve them, not just kind of starve them. You got to really starve them. And I also like the IRGC too. I like the idea of going after them with these bounties. We had Robert Harwood on the other day. I don't know if you heard the Admiral. He's great. And he brought up bounties on people, but also places too. Like maybe there's some other secret locations. If you turn in and that turns out to be a top target, we'll give you X. What do you think? I think you do it all and turbocharge it.
Right. And you asked about the timeline. Now, there's two different timelines. What I'm talking about ends Iran permanently, and that could take a couple months. But taking Kharg Island and securing the Strait of Hormuz and getting that oil flowing through will make the ending of Iran not as critical as it needs to be. As long as the oil's flowing, we're buying time. Secure the damn strait. I don't understand why we can't do that, but get it done. And I'm telling you, the oil flows, money's good, the United States economy takes off. That'll give us a couple months to finish off the last vestiges of the Iranian leadership.
I love where you're going, Robert. I actually think you are spot on. And I also think, like, really starve them. And part of the reason the strait's been tough, they had these errant drones and errant missiles. So, you know, you got a couple rogue people. But I agree, decimate them and squeeze them.
Thanks for listening to The Rita Cosby Show. You can hear The Rita Cosby Show weeknights at 10 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode, so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?